Welcome to the Catalyst Sale podcast. This is a continuation in the series that we started last week. We're focusing on specific topics that you're either thinking about now or will be thinking about sometime in the future. I've got Eric Harrington on the podcast today. Eric is going to talk with us about support. Eric, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I've been looking forward to this conversation for a few days. Appreciate it.
Awesome. So let's just start with it. What is support?
Well, support don't overthink it, right? It's just simply helping your customers use your product and services. And that's a mix of both human engagements and online touchless experiences, I like to call them. So like knowledge-based FAQs and chatbots. That's pretty much it.
Awesome. And what are some common mistakes that we make when it comes to support?
I think one of the easiest ones that comes to mind is the right tools. So you've got email and spreadsheets, which a lot of people use, and those are only going to get you so far. So if you're looking at what tools you need to empower your people with, you really need to think about the support tools. So make sure you have a support solution in place where the customer data and support interactions live. I mean, very fundamental stuff, very basic stuff.
And why do we make these mistakes when it comes to support?
Well, I think, hiring the right personalities and training, when you think about the product and the service, these people need to understand what the product and the services that you're providing. And then you also need to understand people who actually enjoy helping others and solving problems. So oftentimes it's not uncommon where we've had an interaction with someone in support and you walk away from this experience and thinking, wow, that person, clearly isn't the right fit for customer support. I'll plug Carol Quinn, who's a friend of our network on here. She's got a really great book on motivational based hiring. So when you really need to look at your hiring process for support. You need to find people that are passionate about helping people solve problems. And Carol and I, we all met at a mastermind over a year ago. She was actually kind of a surprise guest in person. And that was one book that I enjoyed more than a lot in recent times. So it just got me thinking about, some of these mistakes where we just grab anyone and we say, hey, look, support is just this department. We can throw them in there and they'll learn. The problem is that if people aren't empathetic, by nature, it's hard to teach empathy. You could teach people product knowledge, but it's kind of hard to teach empathy. That's kind of one of those things that you grow up with. It's just kind of this overlooking the fact that you need to have people, you need to have right people. They need to be empathetic. They need to be patient, and they need to have product knowledge. So that's one. Another one I would say is not understanding where your customers want to meet for support. In fact, not understanding your customers in general is a big mistake when you think about that. And I'm talking about the time to think about the various ways your customers can connect with your business. So you'll probably hear buzzwords like multi-channel and omni-channel support. You really have to consider those things. Some of your customers may want to chat with you. Some of them may want to self-serve. They don't want to call on the phone. So we've seen a lot of phone initiatives drop. Live chat's picking up. Self-service is picking up. So you just need to understand your customers. Where do they want you to be when, for the support that they're looking for? Another one, kind of an obvious one, is not being available for your customers, right? That's a bummer. So you need to be very clear with your customers on how they reach you and your support hours, right? So it's just like knocking at the door. You can kind of take the old school walking into the store front and nobody's at the counter and you have to ring a bell, or even worse, you have to holler for somebody. Nobody likes doing that. You think of it, I think a good one may be the phone tree system. Phone systems are great. They're no problem with them. But you pretty much know that there's a high chance of pain to follow when you call a phone tree. So press 1 for this, option 2 for this, option 20 for this. And I don't know, Mike, if you're like me, but sometimes if I call some of these companies and I'll write down like, oh my goodness, what's number 1, what's number 2? Because I've got 10 options to choose from and I'm going to forget option number 2. All right. So, phone systems are good, but don't get me wrong, it's just that they've been used for painful triage, I like to call it, and improper deflection, really. It's just some of these people have abused that. But, just again, be available for your customers, and more importantly, make sure that they know when to expect your availability. Um, and then the other one is not following up with customers. That's a terrible one. That's an expectation thing. It kind of goes along with the other point I mentioned about not being available. Make sure your customers know what the expectation should be. And this is an easy one. And a lot of people struggle with this one because maybe you're not 24/7 and you want to be 24/7, but you can't be for whatever the reason is. So you feel inferior. You feel that maybe the experience is going to be bad, but you can't afford it, right? You have to staff people. You have to potentially outsource other partners, which could impact the experience. So it's just like, be clear with your customers. Clarity is kind of the word for 2019, 2020, I think. And that's just, it's common with technology support because it's common, with support teams that need to escalate to other teams, right? So if you think about it, support's the foyer of your business, right? Once they're a customer, they're not going to sales, they're not going to marketing, they're not going, certainly not to directly to engineering. They come into support. Your front door of your company, the foyer of your business is support. And support people typically don't add features, right? If we're talking about technology, they don't fix bugs. They're trying to help answer questions, help you navigate the product, support you in using it and keeping you moving along. But oftentimes support has to get on with level 2, level 3 engineering and so forth. So, you just need to make sure that your people are available, that they're working, collaborating with their teams, that they're following up so that it just doesn't fall into a black hole. And that also goes back to the tool that you're using. These tools that you're choosing should be things that are popping out to support agents to help remind them that you haven't talked to this customer in 3 days or 4 days or whatever it is, and that you respond back to them. So that's kind of that's my 2 cents on why we make these mistakes, common things.
So and you shared a couple of stories as we were going through that, but what are some other ways that we can avoid doing these common mistakes, whether it's avoid mistakes related to setting expectations or providing a level of clarity, or avoid mistakes just making the right hire, getting the right people in place? What are some other ways that we can avoid making the mistakes that are common when thinking about support?
Well, it's usually a lack of big picture thinking and overcomplicating. Those are the two stepping stones, in my opinion, to losing focus. Usually we're trying to solve, we kind of have this vision, this big picture of what kind of support experience we're going to provide. And then you add a bunch of people and multiple teams and various levels of customers, right? Your level 1, your level 2, and all this stuff. And all of a sudden we really get off track with, hey, let's go back to day 1 when we put all this stuff together and we formed the company, or we formed a new team and we said, hey, we're going to start this initiative with support. What do we want the experience to be? And then work back from that. And so that's kind of my take on that one.
Awesome. I heard, I don't know if it was a general with the Army Corps of Engineers or not, but he was providing a briefing earlier today. And one of the core takeaways I took from this was, you can't solve complex problems with complex solutions. Solve complex problems with simple solutions. And that's what I'm hearing as you just went through that.
Yeah. In fact, being a former Marine, we learned a lot about the fog of war. So a lot of these stories that we learned as young Marines in the late 80s, early 90s, from all these guys that were in World War II and Vietnam, and some of the Vietnam and even some Korean guys actually were leaders in my time in the Marine Corps. And they constantly, when they were training and we were out in the field, they always talked about the fog of war and really just cutting, it down to the basics and just being smart and agile about what it is that you need to do right now in this moment, and not get lost in, the pages and pages of policy and procedure and all that other fun stuff. So yeah, that's very timely, actually.
So how does your view of support, or how should our view of support change when thinking about this move to remote work and work from home?
When working remote, I'll say that I've worked remote for about 12 years. And and before that, I never worked remote, right? My entire professional career was, your typical go to the office, 9 to 5, that sort of thing. And it really doesn't change, quite honestly. You have, I guess it's one of those things where you know what your fundamentals are, right? You know that, like, hey, we're supporting our customers. This is our level of expectation. This is the quality that we want to produce. This is the experience that we want to provide to the customer. So whether you're at home, which most of us are right now these days, or you're in an office with people, you still have to collaborate. And thankfully, it's 2020, right? So we have Zoom, we've got GoToMeeting, we've got Skype, we've got, all these tools at our disposal. And you just have to keep communications up, right? I mean, support managers, they've got their KPIs, they've got their, all the list of things that they're looking at that matter to delivering the experience that they want for their customer base. And it doesn't matter where you're at, you could be anywhere in the world and leverage these things. The key is communication. I know the other day, in fact, I was listening to your and Jody's podcast about communication, which was great. But it kind of has that same theme, right? It's just, we have to communicate with people. And I think Jody had mentioned something about, maybe you need to check in more often, if you are working remote. So sometimes it's easy if you're working remote 3 or 4 days and you're working on a project. So if you're a software person and your head's down and you're developing this thing, you've got a deadline, you may be quiet for a couple of days. And if you're in the office doing that, your manager can walk up and down and they're going back and forth to the break room or whatever, and they can kind of peek in the room and see you, and you're there tapping on your keyboard. So there's a sense of comfort knowing that, hey, this person is there doing something that we need this person to do. It doesn't matter if you're remote. We still have to take care of our customers. This goes kind of back to that whole big, and maybe we could talk about this another time, around roles and purpose, right? We've got this whole purpose as a company, but everybody has their roles to play. And in support, it's very focused, right? It's just our customers are going to come to us with questions about how to use the product or how to leverage the service. And we either need to be there, in live mode with phone calls and chats and in emails or tickets, or we need to be writing really great knowledge base articles so that they can go to the self-help thing, because these people want to self-help. They can type in their question and boom, get their answer. So focusing time, again, sorry to pivot here. This is a good point where everybody's working at home, and it doesn't mean that the world is slowing down, but it means that you may have some more time because you're not in the office and you're not getting pulled with hands reached to a meeting this, meeting that. This is a time for everybody to think, what do I need to clean up? What has been on my list to make better? And everybody, this applies to everybody from top down, no matter how epic your business is. Your knowledge bases need work. My knowledge bases need work. Everybody's does. So being able to allow efficiency of people from getting the answer quickly is key. So yeah, short answer, though, remote, in the office, doesn't matter. We still have the same mission, right? Our customers have questions. We need to make sure they get their answers and they get them quickly and friendly. That's pretty much it.
Perfect. So when we think about it in the context of internal teams, external customers, and self, does anything change?
To some degree. Again, it's easy to get off track when we try to get into the how do we do it. I'll go back to let's go back collectively as a company, right? Get your leadership together, get your managers together and say, hey, look, we as a business are providing this product and service, and this is what the experience we want to be for our customers. And every business has to define what that is. What do they accept as far as the experience goes? Because we've all individually go to stores, go to resorts, all these experiences where we're getting consumer experiences.
Yep.
And we know what we like and what's not great. And so I think that everybody just has to level set and go back to, what is the experience? Just that it's easy. What I will add to that, though, as I was thinking about that question and that you just asked, was silos. You have to really be aware of silos popping up in your business. Especially, kind of like if I mean, businesses deal enough with silos when everyone's in the office, right? I think Dan Cockrell, who you had on the other day, talked about ego, right? And ego is a big problem. Well, when you think about support, support people they really don't have an ego. They just have empathy, and they have a customer who has a question, and they're either going to solve it or they need help solving it. And so all the egos have to go away, all the silos, this is my department, this is my talent, this is my knowledge. So you have to really be aware as managers, people, they need to gather together and really ask the question, do we have silos in our business? And if we do, how are we going to deal with them? And I would say that the way you deal with them is frankly, you call it for what it is and you knock it down as quickly as possible. But those are very two bad things that happen to businesses. And what they do is they impede on the support experience, right? Especially when you're escalating. So throw your egos out the door. Everybody get on the same playing field of everything that you're doing is for the customer experience. It's about somebody that needs your product or service. They're relying on it. In some cases, they're mission critical, as we've talked about before. And at the end of the day, that's really, what is it about the experience? So I think Dan was dead on about egos in here, and that actually helped form some of my thinking for our conversation today.
Great. It would be good to have you back on, and we can talk about support and support, experience, success, and kind of how all of those things come together. So it'd be great to have you back on, Eric. Eric, thanks for the time. If folks want to learn more about support in general, are there any resources that you recommend, either things that you read, things that you like to follow, anything of that nature?
I like, there's a host of like Customer Think is a good one. The Association of Support Professionals, that's a good organization to follow. There's a handful of them out there. So if you just go Google it and you'll find like customer support forums. If you go to LinkedIn, if you're a LinkedIn person, there's tons of customer support, customer success groups out there. Tons of really smart people that are really free to share all the trials and tribulations, things that worked, things that didn't, things that they wish they'd done, and things that are working really well. There's tons of that on LinkedIn, actually, believe it or not. So that's a great place to look. That's a great question.
Perfect. We'll include links in the show notes to a couple of the things that Eric had mentioned and a couple of those groups. Eric, thank you very much for the time.
Yeah, likewise, Mike. It was great talking to you. Hope to talk to you soon, man.